Welcome to the first lesson for the Marine Radio Operator Permit class. This is going to be the first lesson being presented in a series of lessons that will follow. The first thing we're going to go over is the class agenda. Before each lesson, I'm going to show you the class agenda slide. I'm going to talk about where we are in the agenda, what we've done, what we completed, what we still have left to do. So right now, this being the first lesson, we're going to be in the 47 CFR Part 80, the Communications Act, and you can see the first sub-bullet there is general definitions. That's where we're at. We're going to be talking about some general definitions, some terms we're going to learn that will apply to all the communication systems that we're going to use throughout our discussions and what you're going to use when you're operating your vessels. At the end of this, I'm going to go ahead and ask you to watch the Rescue 21 movie and the GMDSS movies. So after this presentation, you'll watch those movies and you'll come back for the next PowerPoint presentation, which will pick up with the GMDSS topics. So that's where we're at. You can see the Communications Act there. The first thing that's kind of circled there is the definitions. That's circled in red. And that's where we're at. We're going to talk about general definitions that will apply to the rest of our lesson topics and the Communications Acts that we're going to talk about. Below that, you can see there's three columns. There's on the left-hand side of the screen, there's the Subpart W. Those are all the regulations for the Global Maritime Distress and Safety System. In the middle column is the Subpart S. That's all the regulations for the small passenger vessel industry. That's going to be the mainstay of this course and the mainstay of where you're going to operate and the regulations you're going to need to know. And then also the Subpart U, which is the Bridge-to-Bridge Radio Telephone Act. That's, again, going to be a part when you're operating vessels in the small passenger vessel industry. You're going to be very familiar with that Radio Telephone Act. You're going to follow a lot of those regulations. Below those boxes, you can see in green there is the Marine Radio Operator Permit, the MROP. And what that's showing you is that by having the Marine Radio Operator Permit, you're going to meet all the requirements for under Subpart U, the Bridge-to-Bridge Radio Telephone Act. You are going to meet all the requirements under Subpart S, the small passenger vessel regulations. And you can see for the Subpart W, it would be the first step in becoming GMDSS qualified. Again, the purpose of the Marine Radio Operator is not for international sailing. It's just for the small passenger vessels operating in domestic waters. So again, we don't need to become GMDSS qualified because we're going to just be MROP qualified. First definition we need to know about is a radio station. What is a radio station? That's a fixed radio station. That's an installed unit. And you can see some pictures there of a VHF and an HF radio system. Again, those are the systems that are installed. They're put in with brackets. They're hardwired in. Those are the radios that we're used to using. Two main categories, ship station and coast station. Kind of obvious. Ship station is on board a vessel. Coast station is on land. A little more definition there. For the ship station, the radio that you're using, the bridge-to-bridge station, that's the radio that's located at the navigation bridge used for navigation communications. So if picture yourself on board a vessel, you're steering at the helm and you reach over to the radio, that's the bridge-to-bridge station. And the position, the principal radio operating position, is the room or adjoining room where the ship is steered. So again, the position of the radio is the principal radio telephone operating position, and the radio itself is the bridge-to-bridge station. Coast station, three subcategories of coast station. There's the private, public, and government. Example of a private would be if you were a CTO dispatcher and you had a radio in the dispatch operations center and you called your vessels. Again, it's used for private purposes, but it's in the marine frequencies and it's on land, so that would be private land station. Example of a government land station would be like the Coast Guard, right? In their operations centers, they have marine radios. They're talking to folks that are afloat. And again, that would be an example of a government coast station. Compulsory versus voluntary ship. If a ship falls under one of the Communications Acts and it's mandatory to have the radio equipment on board and it's mandatory for the people to be properly trained and certified, that's a compulsory ship. A voluntary ship is a ship that does not fall under one of the regulations, but it chooses to have communication systems on board and uses those systems appropriately. Example, that would be a recreational vessel. You're a recreational vessel, you don't fall under any of the Communication Acts, but you decide you want a VHF radio on board, you would be considered a voluntary ship. Associated ship unit, those are those little handheld radios that we use that are operating in the marine frequencies. We'll talk about it later, but one of the things to be aware of that the associated ship unit is being operated under the auspices of the ship station license and the permitted person on board the vessel too. So in other words, if you're the licensed master for the day on board the vessel, you have an FCC license, and then your mate and your Marine crew have associated ship radio units, and they're broadcasting under the auspices of the ship station license, and they'd also be operating under the auspices of your radio operator permit. So you would be held responsible for any of the communications that those folks are making. Vessel traffic service. This is where the Coast Guard has put in some traffic control methods. And what they're trying to do is in those congested waters, they're trying to prevent collisions, groundings, and environmental harm. This comes right out of the rules of the road, but it's a term that we need to know as we're going through our rules for the Marine Radio Operator Permit. Now I want you to, after we finish this lecture here, I want you to see two movies. The first movie is the Rescue 21 movie, so go ahead and watch that movie. And then the second movie I want you to watch is the GMDSS movie, the Global Maritime Distress and Safety System movie. Go ahead and watch that. And what I'm trying to do here is both of these movies are great introductory into some of the technologies and radio systems and communication systems that we're going to talk about further. But by watching these two movies, what you're going to be able to do is you're going to be able to have a visual for some of these radio and communication systems that you may not be familiar with. So as you're going through the movie, go ahead and continue to take your notes. You can even follow along with your student guide that you've printed out. As always, if you have any questions, just give me a call, give me an email. We'll get your questions answered.